do that. Kyle, are we getting ready to stream? Oh, it's not showing it to me. It says it's offline. Oh, there. Yeah, now it's doing something. 19 are waiting. Okay, I'm seeing the chat, but I'm not seeing any video. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm seeing the chat, but I'm not seeing any video. Okay.
Oh, that was a good repeat.
Here we go. Oh, good. I'm going to turn down my volume.
So let's all mute our microphones. So in case you're also following, then it's not also picking it up in your speakers. So let's all mute our microphones. So in case you're also following, then it's not also picking it up.
At least one or two people who are following on the live stream have those volumes up. So anybody following on live stream, like on a secondary iPad or something like that, if you are also on the Teams meeting, turn your volume down on the iPad that's following the live stream. Otherwise, we're going to get that feedback after a delay. Those volumes up. So anybody following on live stream, like on a secondary iPad or something like that, if you are also on the Teams meeting, turn your volume down on the iPad that's following the live stream. Otherwise, we're going to get that feedback after a delay.
I'm muted.
So anybody following on live stream, like on a secondary iPad.
Hey, Pat.
Yes.
Have you tried muting yourself really quick?
I don't know how to do that.
If you like scroll your mouse over the video of all of us or wherever all the panels are, there's that little bar that pops up on the bottom, and there's the microphone symbol.
I'm muted.
I think that may have helped. Yeah, I think that might have worked.
Okay, but Pat, you're not following us only on the live stream, or are you?
So, sorry, I'm only in the app.
I think that may have helped.
Okay,
Only
I think you're only following in the live stream then, is that right? Pat, you're not following us only on the live stream, or are you?
This is mind bending, isn't it?
Over and over and over.
Yeah.
If I may, I just want to make sure everybody is muted in Teams. And then also, if they are following along in the live stream, muted on the YouTube channel as well. That seems like that might be the issue.
If Pat is going to be doing presentations here, you have to be in the Teams app somehow, right? He is? Okay, good. All right. So everybody follow Amanda's advice, and if you are part of the Teams presentation now, you can't have your volume up on the live stream that you're following, otherwise it's going to interfere. So if you're on the Teams app, you don't need to be listening to it on the live stream. Is that clear? Amanda, you want to give any further instructions to that?
Nope, I think that sounds perfect.
Okay, we may be good. It sounds like we may be good. Hello, everybody. We have 32 people following the live stream, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people on the Teams app. If any of you have not seen that funny Facebook video, which is showing how a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting takes place among actors who are there doing it, go look that up. It's the funniest thing in the world. Welcome to the third or fourth convocation we've had. This is all part of a project that Amanda started, and we are meeting every Friday, and the prior Fridays have been informational because we've had information to dispense. There's very little information to dispense this time, but what we do have is our own resident special guest artist who has been with us many times on campus before, Pat Sheridan, saying hello to us all, and he's agreed to join us today and work with us in teaching us all about how to survive in this age of continued social isolation and awkwardness as we all try to get our bearings. I have to say, as an introduction, that it is remarkable to me how well we all have adapted. We are, as faculty members and staff members, trying to dispense information and interact with our students. We are trying to facilitate that happening as smoothly as possible. And from the reactions we're getting back from students, I hope we're succeeding. And aside from that, we've got 3 weeks after this left of school before final week, and we're going to plow through to the end. But as I said, today, special guest, Pat Sheridan, is joining us, and he has been, of course, remarkably informative and inspirational when he's been visiting campus. And we hope that he'll bring that same degree of enthusiasm to us as we all get used to this new normal. So I'm going to mute my microphone, and we don't have a planned agenda that we've talked about a lot ahead of time, but we know that Pat is going to be able to help us get through all this and hopefully do so in a way that augments what we're doing rather than detracts from what we're doing. So Pat, thank you again for joining us. It's terrific that you're here. I'm muting my microphone as of right now.
I'm sorry, I'm still listening to John talk. I'm still getting a huge feedback loop like 3 times. So it's impossible for me to do anything because you're still talking.
I'm muting my microphone as of right now.
There we go. Maybe now it's quiet. How we doing? Is there only one human talking now?
I'm sorry, I'm still listening to.
Yeah, see, now I'm getting myself coming back. So I'm hearing myself again through YouTube. So somebody's got their microphone on YouTube. I see Connor, I see Kyle, I see all kinds of people that have their mics on, and I'm hearing the YouTube stream.
Is there only one human talking now?
I don't have any YouTube on. How we doing now? Is this better? No, okay, tell me how long I have. Not hearing anybody.
We're not going anywhere.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right. That was a little bit like talking to my ex-wife. I hear everything 3 times. Holy crap. So thanks for being here with me, everybody. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a little bit about how we're put together as humans in terms of our brains, and then walk you through a little bit of a couple of slides that actually they're not mine. They're from a wonderful neurobiologist here in Arizona who's done a couple of webinars on trauma-informed learning as well as trauma-informed pedagogy. And she allowed me to use some of her slides for these presentations to talk about trauma and whether you think you're feeling it or not and whether you're experiencing it or not. So I'm going to try to get my screen to share here. Seem to have lost. There we go. All right, share my desktop. There's my desktop. Cool. Okay, so maybe we've talked about this before, maybe we haven't, but in terms of your brain and the neuroscience of your brain, there's no such thing as talent. There is only skill. When you're looking at something that looks like talent, that's skill that's been highly acquired, all right? So if we're going to practice anything, if we're going to get better at anything, we have to know how to be able to learn. So this is your humanity as I put it together. You have three parts of yourself. You have a physical, an intellectual, and an emotional self, all right? And the problem with your humanity is that when one of those areas moves out of balance, the others follow. So let's say, for example, you have a temperature of 103. You're not going to be in a great mood. Let's say you're a parent and your children haven't told you something. When you find out, you have a horrible emotional reaction. Let's say that two people are emotionally arguing really horribly emotionally. They usually display very little intellect. So when one pulls out of balance, the other ones follow. The good news is that when one moves back towards balance, the other ones follow as well. The bad news about the good news is that there's only one access point. So what I mean by that, and then I'm gonna actually jump back and forth between some slides here, is that in your brain, yeah, let me get this one. Sorry, everybody. In your brain, there we go. Hopefully you can see that. We have three parts of our brain that are operating in terms of decision making and in terms of emotions. So you can sort of see from the cartoon, the amygdala, this is where our emotions start from. This is, it keeps us from, this is the part of the emotional spectrum that gets pulled out of balance. So that part is affected in terms of trauma. The hippocampus, which is right behind the amygdala, this is the part of the brain structure that helps us remember. This is where stories are, memories are stored, stuff like that. And then the prefrontal cortex, that would be in our humanity rubric, that would be, sorry, back here, that would be what we would call the intellect. Whoops. Yeah, there we go. That would be the intellectual side of what's happening there. Okay. So when I'm trying to go back and forth between these, something's happening in my brain when this is going on. So I have to recognize that, sorry, that there's opposites. Now, the hypothalamus is the part that has to do with hormones. That's not really affected so much other than the stress hormones that we're secreting when we're super nervous and super stressed. But the two that are the opposite of the prefrontal cortex are the amygdala and the hippocampus. So you can read this slide here and sort of process what that means. But it means when one's out of balance, the others follow. And so if the amygdala or the hippocampus are experiencing growth or lots of stimulation, then it's going to shut down the prefrontal cortex. That's what is happening in the process of trauma. Okay, so in terms of, I got one more for you. Yeah. So when we're experiencing trauma, as we are now, especially every day, day after day after day after day after day, which we would call that chronic stress. So your hippocampus is an atrophy. It's getting smaller. So that's about memories. That's why if you're finding yourself to be more forgetful right now, you're just simply experiencing the normal symptoms of trauma, of stress. Your amygdala is in hypertrophy, that's to be overstimulated. So it makes us feel really nervous and very anxious. And then, of course, at the same time that's happening, the prefrontal cortex is shrinking as well. So that's the intellectual side of things. So when our brain is in trauma, when it's stressed out, this is what's happening. So from the standpoint of what's going on in our brain symptomatically, all right, so if you're experiencing any of these types of things that are going on with right now, right, so the trauma of not being in school, the trauma of not being in an ensemble, the trauma of you're a student teacher of not knowing what's going to happen. I mean, the fear of the unknown at this point is probably the greatest fear. If you're not in a place where there's lots of disease that's visible. I'm in Arizona, lots of disease visible here. I'm a musician, so I'm hundreds of friends in New York City, and I get pictures every day of folks walking by hospitals where you don't see pictures this terrible on the news. I'm not sure anybody's ready to consume those types of visuals. So those folks are experiencing enormous amounts of trauma, and they're all exhibiting 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or all of these symptoms regularly. So if you're looking at that, you're like, oh yeah, that's just making sense. I don't know why that I was not caring about school, or why am I not sleeping right now, if you're not having a conscious thought that what you're experiencing is trauma, right? To all of a sudden not have toilet paper at the grocery store and to not be going to school might not feel like something that you would use the word trauma to define, but if you're experiencing symptoms like you're seeing on that screen there, then what you are dealing with is trauma, and these are the symptoms that your brain is giving you. So then on the other side, I got one more slide to show in that regard. There it is. So then you sort of see, is your physical and your emotional, and then your behavioral and cognitive. This is the part for me that's sort of intellectual. In other words, the behavioral slides in between the emotional and the intellectual. And those are sort of the outward signs of it. All right, so back to my slides here. When we're talking about this and we're in this situation when one's been pulled out of balance, the problem is that the emotional side is a spectrum. So if you've heard me give this workshop before, you know that this is a sliding scale. We can be scared, we can be fearful, judgmental, we can be angry, we can be raging, we can play viola. I'm kidding. There's a spectrum of emotional range. It's different than the intellect. Prefrontal cortex is more like a switch. Your intellect switches on or switches off. So if your amygdala is stimulated too much, you're under stress, you're freaking out, your intellect just closes immediately. So you have to have a way to be able to get back towards balance, something towards the middle. And that's the sort of the issue that everybody finds themselves in, is that they think when they're in the middle of an emotional imbalance that there's some sort of intellectual way to talk their way out. And there isn't, because the intellect is switched off. It's not available. So the only way to get back to something that resembles balance, where your intellect will switch on, where the emotional cloud or the emotional stress eases somewhat and comes to the middle, is the physical one, because the intellect is in charge of self-awareness, and if it's switched off, you can't be aware, and your emotional spectrum is moved off to the side now more than ever, because all of us are living in a time, unless you know somebody 118, 119 years old who has a memory of the 1918 pandemic, then we don't know anybody personally that we're able to reference in terms of what living now means, what that means in terms of that. And you would also agree that 120 years ago, institutional learning, which is the stressor that we're all trying to be working inside of, whether it's offering information or trying to glean information from the system, was drastically different then than it is now. So I hate using this unprecedented times sort of catchphrase, but it's true. And it's the part you have to acknowledge when you're feeling like, well, there's just no toilet paper at the Piggly Wiggly. Why am I feeling all this stress? That you have to acknowledge that it is stress, that it is trauma, and that then if you're going to get back to something where you're going to be learning, where it feels easier to learn, you have to do something to make that happen. So something that's proactive. All right, so in the context of playing a musical wind instrument, why we would practice breathing is because tension is the enemy of tone. Here's my lung capacity rubric. Some of you have seen this before. The first 10% keeps your lungs in the right shape. The next 15% is the air that keeps your lungs in the right, is the air that you're using right now. You use it for listening, you use it for talking, you use it for, Candy Crush or whatever normal everyday activity that you're doing. Raking the leaves in your lawn, right, Connor? And so that would be the next part of the breathing, which is when we're doing something athletic, like the first day of any sort of major athletic workout. We're using about 40% of our lung capacity in the range of 25 to 65 in a rapid way, where we're sort of panting. I call it athletic breathing. It's the breathing that our body actually needs to do to get back to normal everyday breathing, which is just a very small portion of our breathing. When we sleep, that's the only time we heal. Only time the body's parasympathetic nervous system is in full gear is when we're sleeping. That's when we heal. And when we're sleeping, we breathe over this relaxed flow range that you're seeing here, this dotted line that takes us from 25% of our lung capacity to about 95% of our lung capacity. This breathing from the context of, playing an instrument is important because it's relaxed. But from the context of life, where we are right now, breathing is important because tension is the enemy of life. All right, so we have to be doing something physical. So when we're trying to learn any skill, this is a cross section of my brain. Those little white dots are neurons. And when we send a signal or trying to do something like play an F sharp on a B flat tuba or something like that, we're using a neuron that's in charge of that action. When we repeat that action, a substance called myelin wraps around that neuron, the entire length of that neuron. And what myelin does, it's electroconductive. So it makes the signal for that neuron want to come to that neuron, not the F neuron, not the G flat neuron, not the A flat natural minor neuron, but the F sharp neuron or whatever it is you're trying to play. So it makes it want to go there. So it's mistake prevention, and it also sends the signal faster. So that's the idea that something today is difficult and something tomorrow becomes easier and easier and easier. So when we repeat those actions, we myelinate over the length of that neuron, and then eventually one day, bang, F concert comes out, no problem. All right, the neurons that fire at the same time wire at the same time. So that the line in between the neurons, that's not myelin. It's just the graphic representation that those neurons will fire at the same time if they're worked out at the same time. All right, so in the this is important from the context of stress reduction, but let me put it in the context of music. On a brass instrument, if I'm supposed to play ba ba ba, I need to be able to hear the sound in my head, ba da da, and move air to be able to make happen in my lips. So two things necessary: air to make the vibration happen and ear to make my imagination come from the vibration. Everybody else would use the same thing, but you'd have an imagination. In other words, what does your ear hear and what is the technique based on your instrument to deliver your imagination? So back to our rubric of what's going on in our brain, then we know that in order to acquire a skill, we have to be able to break down the things that go into that skill. So we have to, so in the context of me playing the opening of the Star Spangled Banner, ba 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 ba, I would practice those two things separately. One would be to sing it, that's practicing my ear. The other one would be to do practicing of the wind separate from playing. And then eventually the F concert neuron would represent the product, the result. Bum, ba, bum, bum, that one, etc. Okay? What we never considered in the past was what our state of mind was when we were practicing, because we didn't feel, the neuroscience community hadn't really labeled that thoughts were activity based on, that was traveling through a neuron, and that if you repeated that thought, that myelin would wrap around that neuron. We thought that thoughts were random and that they could happen anytime they wanted to, and that we didn't feel that thoughts could become skilled. But if you repeat a thought enough, you will think that thought in relation to whatever the activity is. Or if the thought is, the activity is related to a thought, the thought of the activity will make you feel like you either want or not want to do that activity. So it's really important that in the context of learning anything, you have your state of mind in the right place, which is the need for this conversation now in the middle of global trauma. That's why we have to talk about this, all right? Because a lot of us are practicing out of duty, out of the fact that we're like, well, we're not together, so I better practice right now. But if you're experiencing trauma, then the neurons that fire together, wire together. So then you're going to be putting all kinds of things that are not joyful, that are not neutral. Let's say if joy is not possible right now, then just think neutral. But instead, maybe duty gets involved. I have to practice. I'm scared of all types of things. I'm trying to practice in the midst of COVID-19, but I'm terrified for myself. I'm terrified for my grandparents. I'm just terrified that we may never go back to school, whatever you might be scared of. You're angry for all the reasons that might happen. You're super judgmental about what's been going on in the room right now. So the neurons that fire together wire together. Then eventually they're all wired together. That's called performance anxiety. So when this broke out, I have to be honest with you, I was talking to several of my friends that are teachers, and they're like, yeah, what do you think's going to be happening on the other side of this? And I was like, well, but the normal private client list that I have is going to probably grow enormously, because that's what I normally work with, is people that have performance anxiety or things that are more neurological than that, like task-specific focal dystonia, for example. So the type of work that I have done with clients now and in the past about trying to get them to relax, to calm down, and to learn their instrument in a different way, one that involves I lost the slide. Sorry, there it is. One that involves joy rather than all this garbage, right? Is that we have to learn a new way. So that's true right now. We have to have a way when we're learning anything to make sure that we're checking in with our state of mind. And if our state of mind is such that we can't connect, that it's like I can't be neutral, then that's the job. In other words, you don't have to work on your imagination for your instrument. You don't have to work on your technique for your instrument, and you don't have to work on the result for your instrument. You just got to work on your emotions. And so some of that might be what's happening now. Many of you that have studied with me before, heard me lecture about this before, have seen these two lists. You need an A list and a B list, because if you're upset, your intellect, your prefrontal cortex is not thinking straight. So your self-awareness is terrible. So these are my lists. This is the A list. This is the awesome teacher list. This includes healthy playing. This is where I try to get my brain before it's time to learn anything, whether I'm trying to learn a new piece of software for photography or for videography, or whether I'm trying to learn a new concerto on the tuba. I try to make sure that this is the place that I check in first before it's time to practice. And if you're sitting there going like, how the heck am I supposed to get to the A list? That's what we're going to do together today at the end of this. We're going to talk about what activities you can do to push your sympathetic nervous system to the side, the stressor, the fight or flight, and to invoke your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the one that's about rest and healing and calm. So we'll get there. And the A list represents sort of the parasympathetic nervous system's way of teaching you, which is the only way to learn, which is not in stress, okay? There's the B list. Let's look at the B list. There's probably some things on that B list that seem like the right thing to do, especially as a music student, right? Things like something to prove. I got to work on my perfection and execution. I can't play this piece, so I got to work on the problem, right? It doesn't feel good in my lips or my throat or whatever, so I'm focusing on the sensory feedback of my instrument or my, my chops, whatever they are, blah, 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 blah. So this is that list. That's the good list. That's the bad list. There they are, organized in antonyms. So if you find yourself on the B list with something to prove, you can slide across to the left and see that you're really supposed to be trying to play with something to offer. So it's a teaching list. It's a mirror. It's a mirror for self-awareness. When things are going well for me, whenever I'm learning a skill, I find myself on the A list easily. And when things start to go badly, which is every practice session, by the way, I find myself on the B list. Find myself on the B list, slide across to the A list, and with intention, I try to stay on that A list item until I slip off. When I find myself slipping off the A list too often, 2, 3, 4 times in 5 minutes, it's time to go outside. It's time to go for a walk, get a cookie, get a hug. In other words, it's time to invoke the parasympathetic nervous system, because the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, has taken over. And you can't learn when that's happening, because that's the emotional side. The limbic brain is winning. All right. So sorry, we'll get to that in a second. If you want to learn more about breathing, we'll come back to this. All right. So let me get out of this. Hold on.
Patrick?
Yes.
We can't see the new slides.
Can you see this?
Saw that. The trauma.
Yeah, good. So you can see my desktop.
Yes. That's the first slide.
So these slides went by quick. Yeah, I'm going to come back to these. Thanks. I'm going to come back to those. No problem. So in that regard, I'm going to have to find what I want to cover with you. I can't remember where it is. Right. So let me open this one up. Just a simple little screen. So the world is facing trauma. We're all using our hypothalamus to produce hormones. The stress hormones are the ones that are releasing into our body. When we release stress hormones into our body, fight or flight happens. All right. And so what that means is, thanks, message from mom. What that means is that our thinking is impaired. Stress hormones means that your body, that something's wrong. So, for example, at the moment that you're releasing stress hormones, this is that ultimate moment of it's really important to take care of yourself with what you're eating and what you're drinking right now, because when your body releases stress hormones, it thinks that you're about to starve to death. And so everything you eat or drink, it keeps. So it's very easy during stressful times, for example, to eat very normal like you always did and gain weight because of the stress hormones, or the body's thinking that it's about to go into winter. And so it should hold on to it. So this is everything. So from the brain standpoint, this is impairing our ability to make decisions, to learn, to remember, all of those things. So it's important to be caring for yourself when this is happening. In other words, not expecting high demand when you find yourself frustrated. All right. So because of what trauma is doing, some of these things might be happening to you guys right now. Changes are happening in your classes. It's hard to keep track of them. You're having a hard time making decisions about, like, are you going to learn today or not? Are you going to engage with this or not? And having a hard time prioritizing. All of this relates to the fact that your brain is in trauma. That's what it relates to. All right. So number of ways that you can invoke. I'm going to try to find the slide. This is another good one just to look at. Right. So if you're experiencing any of this, you shouldn't be freaking out. You should know that your response is normal to an abnormal event. That's really important. Maybe you want to write that down, print it out, and put it all over your house. If you're experiencing those trauma symptoms that we talked about earlier, you're normal. You're absolutely having the normal reaction to a horrible event. And so that means that your autonomic nervous system is working great. All right. Doesn't make you feel better, but it makes you know that you're operating the way you should be operating. All right. So part about how to regulate your emotional response and to learn from it. So I want to give you some tips about this, but the main ones, sorry, I'm usually disorganized. Just ask Connor. Here we go. This is a good one. All right. So again, I'm just repeating what I talked about earlier. Right? Everybody's secreting stress hormones, whether you're conscious of it or not. So your hippocampus makes it hard to remember things. The prefrontal cortex is shut down, so it's hard to make decisions of any kind, hard to think. And your amygdala is overstimulated, so we're in a constant state of stress. All right? So the main things that we can be doing, and let me show you this one too, just so you sort of can see if you're experiencing these things. Right, your fight or flight response, dry mouth, pupils dilate, your stomach doesn't feel so good, you become tense in your muscles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So good information there on a slide like this. I'll sort of organize these all together. Everybody. There is one more. I'm looking for it, and I don't know if I find it here anywhere. Oh, yes, great. So this is really important to remember. Even those of you out there that are super intellectual folks, the nerds, right? The euphonium players. Yes, you know who you are. So we have this idea that the intellect and the emotions go back and forth. So the brain is the intellect, the limbic system is the amygdala and the hippocampus, right? So the part that gets all stressed out. And our body always goes to how we feel about it. And then we assign meaning on the other side of it, which means that we sort of always activate our limbic system. We get upset about it. And then when we have time and we have space, the rational brain can come back into place. So when we're in a situation like we're in now, where the limbic system is being stimulated constantly, we have to have some ways of combating that, or getting our rational brain, or turning on our prefrontal cortex. And that system is your parasympathetic nervous system. You can Google it. But it's the part that's the opposite of fight or flight. So if we're in fight or flight, we want to work opposite of that. So number one way of doing that, intentional breathing. So we'll do some of that to close today. Other thing, exercise, going for a walk where you can, going for a bike ride where it's safe. This is important. It's important. It's important if you can only go in your backyard to be outside for a large portion of the day. When you're outside, your eyes naturally bilaterally stimulate your brain, both sides of your brain, to give yourself, because it's spending randomly half of your time in this visual sphere and half of your time in this visual sphere. So it balances you, it calms you down. So that's the part that we want to have. But we got to understand that when it's coming in, that as human beings, we feel it first, and then we assign meaning later. So some of the stuff where you're worried about something that you hadn't consciously thought about might be working on you. There might be stress happening to you subconsciously that you haven't yet articulated or talked about. So we'll talk about some of that. But one of the main reasons to ignite your parasympathetic nervous system is to exercise. The other one is to breathe. The other one is some intentionality towards diet, towards exercise, towards routine, in terms of getting up in the day. Yeah, sorry, I got to go through some of these things. Yeah. There we go. All right. So how do we mitigate the sympathetic nervous system? This is the fight or flight, right? So this is the other side, the parasympathetic one. So there's the stress that we have, right? The stress that we have before we play a recital is not an immediate threat to our life. It's just an immediate threat to our grade. So it's not something that's the kind of stress that you can turn into good stress versus the type of stress which is about life-threatening things that's only has really one meaning to it, right? So we can activate our parasympathetic nervous system. It's breathing, it's walking, watching comedy, making sure that you're engaging with others, even if it's electronic, to be trying to find something that's hilarious, that's funny, to be engaged in because of what that does for our parasympathetic nervous system. It makes fight or flight assuage. It goes down, it goes away. Gardening this is not my list. This is on there, but it's something that you like to do, something that you like to do with your hands. Helps engage your parasympathetic and takes you out of fight or flight, makes your sympathetic nervous system calm down. And then as it relates to that next one, which is self-care, this is really important, which is to be proactive about making sure you don't watch the news, not be watching a YouTube death ticker minute by minute. And to be taking care of your sleep, but also in a hygienic way. And I don't mean that in terms of washing your hands. I mean it in terms of making sure you give yourself a couple of hours with no screen on at all. It doesn't matter if you've got blue blockers and you've got the thing turned on your screen. You need the screen to be off. You need to be disengaged with things that are about the news. And that's a good time to breathe. That's a good time to meditate. That's a great time to go for a walk. But be proactive about your sleep, because sleep is when your parasympathetic nervous system is in full gear for healing and your sympathetic nervous system is gone to sleep. It's not active. So you need to be careful about making sure you get enough sleep, and the steps toward it are important to consider. I talked about diet. It's not about losing weight. It's just about making sure that you're giving your body what it needs to be happy, for real, nutritionally. Right. For me, that's really important in terms of hydration. So making sure that you're drinking enough water, because most of us are sitting in front of a screen for way too much. Our steps and our activity is way lower than it used to be. So make sure you're hydrating and staying active. And then the last one is this is from my friend that did this lecture. It's just about routine. In other words, take a shower every day. Part of that's about cleaning your skin. Your skin is the largest organ in your body. Your skin from the inside out is getting rid of toxins. So one of the best ways to heighten the quality of your immune system is to clean your skin. Starts with dry brushing. You can Google that. And then after that, it's making sure that you're getting clean every day. Seems completely silly, but it's actually a really big part of making sure that you're mitigating the sympathetic nervous system and what it's doing to affect all of it in terms of making your emotions raw, but also affecting your learning, which is the context of this that we're talking about. Okay, so in that regard, it's easy to think about, oh, I need to go for a walk. I need to watch something that's fun. I need to be doing these things. But the other part of this is, let me come back to you guys, is having an effective breathing regimen. So somebody there has been leading one for you. I think that's kind of what I'd like to do now with everybody, is just lead you through something like that. That's a common one, so that when you're finding yourself super upset or just feeling anxious, that this is the type of thing that you can do. So I have Sam and I developed two different sort of routines. The one is because basically as performers, we have two things that need to happen. I'm the type of performer because formerly I used to play lots of concerts. I play so many concerts that I need to be uplifted to play a show. I need to really get excited to go do it because I do it so often. Most performers are the other way. They find themselves to be far too fast and spinny and nervous and anxious, and so they need to calm down before a performance. So we've developed exercise routines that sort of do both, that regulate your frequency of your brain up or down. So we're going to do the down one right now together. And all you need to be is in a nice chair, or standing up works too. And just to be comfortable, that's about it. So sound good? Cool. Let's do it. All right. Don't answer all at once. So let's do this from the standpoint of bringing our brain frequency down. So the first exercise is just to notice where our brain is at. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes. So everybody close your eyes. And then you're just going to do this instruction, which is follow your breath. There is no other instruction. So while you're breathing, notice when you breathe in and notice when you breathe out. That's it. Don't try to change it. Just notice when it happens. And as you're breathing and you're noticing your breath, notice how often your attention goes away from that. And we'll call that the frequency of our brain, right? We'll sort of, in other words, if your brain is darting off of your breath constantly, or you're trying to control your breath, and then you're like, oh, wait, I'm not supposed to control my breath. That's a fast brain. So let's try to slow that down. So that was just simply an inventory exercise to get ourselves a frequency of where our brain is at. So you can all open your eyes now. And now let's do some exercise. So for me, follow your breath is the way to check in. It's the way to check in and see if I can actually execute that instruction, which is just to follow it. Difficult, yes? So let's make it easier. Let's see if we can get this to happen in an easier way, okay? All right. Now what we're going to do is when we're breathing in and out, when I ask you to keep your tongue in the yogic tongue position, that's where the tip of your tongue touches the roof of your mouth. So it's like you're saying the letter L and you leave your tongue there when you breathe in. So let's just practice that. So everybody say L, leave your tongue there, close your mouth, breathe in through your nose, and then whoosh out from your mouth around your tongue. So breathe in, and you're going to keep your tongue in the yogic tongue position the entire time. Tip of your tongue touching the roof of your mouth. Breathe in. Out through your mouth, whoosh around your tongue. That's very good. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and out in this sort of speed and be relaxed about it, okay? So we're going to my click, we're just going to go 4 beats in, 4 beats out, and in the middle, we're going to suspend our breathing. This is important. When you're suspending your breathing, don't hold your breath like you're going to go underwater. Like, what I want you to do is just don't breathe. You can open or close your mouth, it doesn't matter, but don't breathe, okay? So let me demonstrate. So I'm going to breathe in for 4. Through my nose, I'm going to suspend for 4, and then out for 4. Cool. So that's the exercise. So let's do that together. Let's go in for 4, suspend for 4, and out for 4. Keep your tongue in the same position the entire time. Here we go. In, 4, and suspend, 2, 3, out for 4. Relax. Good. Let's go 6, 6, and 6. In, and suspend, 2, 3, 4, 5, out for 6. Relax. Good. Let's go 6, 12, 6. Suspend for 12. In, 6, and hold your breath. 1, 2, suspend it. 3, 4, halfway, 7, 8. Here we go. Out for 12 and 6. Relax. Everybody sigh. Oh, beautiful. Good. Let's do that one again. Let's go 6, 18, 6. Here we go. In through your nose, out through your mouth, tongue in the yogic tongue position. Why? I don't know. I have no idea, but it works. So do it. Here we go. In for 6, in, and suspend. 1. And out. 6. Relax. 10, 20, 10. Here we go. In, 10, and suspend. Halfway. Out. 10. Sigh. Now everybody close your eyes and follow your breath. Notice the frequency of your brain now. It should be slower. It should be easier to follow your breath. So keep your eyes closed, stay calm. Let's get our imagination involved. So every time you're breathing out, I want you to see the number 1. And every time you're breathing in, I want you to see the number 2 in your mind's eye. And make the background black and make the lettering white. Breathe out, see a 1. Breathe in, see a 2. Change the background to neon yellow. Brighter than that. Change the numerals to dark lettering. Maybe green. Ooh, spirit. Breathe in and breathe out. Follow your breath. Nice and easy. Good. Everybody open your eyes. So while you're doing something like that, you don't have to see numbers. You can go on whatever journey you'd like to go. You can go through your computer. You can go on a walk in your favorite place that you can't get to right now. But when you get yourself to a place where following your breath is easy to do or easier to do than when you started, then you're ready to hang out for a little bit and follow your breath. You're ready to visualize. The thing that's important to remember, whether you're learning skill or whether you're trying to deal with trauma, is that your brain does not distinguish between the object or the reality and the memory of it. To see this bottle in my hand right here, and then for me to close my eyes and imagine that bottle in my hand, my brain does not know the difference between the two in the brain. It doesn't know the difference, which means that you can create serene, calm, beautiful, all types of things in your brain if you get yourself to the place where you have mitigated the talking from the sympathetic nervous system and you've calmed down and engaged your parasympathetic nervous system via breathing, walking, laughing. That's it. Stuff like that. Does that make sense? Things that make you happy. You're like, but only band makes me happy. Okay, well, time to widen your perspective. And it's also good to acknowledge that you, in those regards, in other words, the things that you're desperately missing, that you're grieving those. One of the first steps towards grieving is to be able to acknowledge that it's happening. So acknowledge it, breathe through it, play a beautiful song. And those are the things that we need to be doing in terms of taking care of ourselves right now. If I would rather have, for all of you, as well as for myself, a day where my thoughts were, okay, I really need to practice my instrument today, or I really need to sing today. But anytime I connected with my chops, of my musical chops, the tension, the stress, the trauma, the worry, the concern that's consuming the planet right now is the thing that you are consumed with. In other words, if that's drawing your attention away, then I would much rather have you spend an entire day just working on your A list, just breathing, just being calm, just trying to get yourself to a place where things are going to be chill. And in those moments where you have a little bit of serenity and a little bit of peace, pick up your instrument, play a little song, and then put it away. And if it's only 5 minutes today or 1 minute today, that's better connection to your craft towards whatever skill you're trying to acquire than to force yourself under stress to do it, because the neurons that fire together wire together. So you'll only connect trauma and stress to that activity if you don't try to mitigate it before it's time to engage with it. Does that make sense? Hopefully to everybody. So does anybody have, I don't know, if you're on the YouTube, I guess you'd have to give me the questions, Amanda, but if they were in the meeting chat, I guess I would see those. But does anybody have anything you want to ask about any of this blah, blah? Sounds like a bunch of hippie crap, Sheridan. I know it does. Anybody got anything you want to ask? That's the deal. And you've the great thing about your community of the School of Music from the standpoint of breathing, culture for it. And there are experts in your midst that are happy to teach it to you online. And so I would encourage that happening as regularly as you can have it happen. And from those that are leading it, that know the whole pedagogy, that know the published system, it's breathing for the brain is what we just did, and we did the calm one. So I know folks like Connor would know exactly what that is, and you can craft a breathing routine to go to that. For me, if I was super upset, to calm myself down, it wouldn't stop at 10, 20, 10. I'd probably go to 10, 30, 10, 20, 40, 20, 30, 60, 30, super slow to get myself to calm down. Go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you for doing that. That was actually my first breathing gym, so I've never done it before, and I already feel a lot more relaxed, so thank you. Samuel Sharp says on the YouTube channel, do you schedule times in your day to do this type of breathing, or do you do the breathing when you feel like you need to?
Yeah, the answer is yes for both of those. I do a scheduled part. That's how I always start to practice. So I always start with breathing. And as a tuba player, that's the obvious part. It's like, oh, well, of course you breathe before you play the tuba. But it's not really the primary purpose that I do the breathing. It's really to make sure that I'm calm and that I'm ready to engage in learning where my brain is ready to learn. So that's the main reason. So I always start that way. Do I use it throughout the day when I feel stressed? Absolutely. At this moment, in a day like, in a time like this, probably better to schedule it routinely throughout the day. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to do some breathing, I'm going to go for a walk, I'm going to come back, I'm going to, and to be having places where you do it. How long? It depends on you. There are times when I'm leading exercises that we're going 20, 25 minutes, and there are times when we go just as long as we did just now, which was just a couple minutes. But it's the main thing about breathing as one of the activities to mitigate the havoc that your sympathetic nervous system, that your fight or flight response is having on you, is to breathe. So breathing, walking, breathing, exercise, laughter, something that you love to do. Go. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Isaac Hicks asks, if we want to look more into psychological brain stuff, what would you recommend?
There is there's all kinds of places that you can go. I'm going to give you, I'm going to put this in the chat and see if it works. There is a professor here right now at Pima Community College who has put out, she's a neurobiologist, 2 different lectures. One is on trauma-informed learning, and the other one is trauma-informed pedagogy. Here are both of those in order. And you can also follow her for these links on her Twitter account, which I will also send through now, which is, sorry, give me a second, which is here. That's her Twitter. and that's her name, Dr. Mason Maud. She has a whole bunch of really, a lot of the slides I used today were from her, of really great information. She grew up in Iraq, and she was in Baghdad going to school as a middle school student during the Gulf War. So she was in Baghdad and lived through 40 days and nights of bombing, and then subsequent bombing after that, and was trying to go to middle school and learn during that time. And so her information is not only relevant because of what's happened, but relevant because of how she survived and then what she decided to study. So that is a great jumping off point for information about that type of neuroscience. Some of the other places that you can go for this type of thing is just start with Google, start with your autonomic nervous system, and then Google search your sympathetic nervous system, and then Google search your parasympathetic nervous system. Those will take you down a rabbit hole that will keep you busy longer than Alice. Those are great places to start, though. Anything else? Hope everybody's doing great. We have a house here. My daughter's a freshman at Arizona State University, so she's in the same boat that all the students are. You guys are in. And she's been online now for over a month. It's going to be online. Looks definitely through the summer, maybe the fall. And some of the professors have been really great, and some of them are terrible at teaching online and haven't changed their grading system or their expectations at all. And so it's super freaking out all the students. And my son is a senior in high school, so he's going through all of that loss of no prom, no final jazz concert, no spring festival, no band trip, no final spring band concert, no graduation, blah, blah, blah. Everything that every senior at every level of education is missing out on. So he was going to march in a drum corps this summer, and that got canceled. So super disappointed. So we're dealing with all that here, and it's part of the regular thing. So we hike together when we can, and we cook together, which is one of the hobbies of the house here. And I check in with my kids regularly just to make sure they're doing okay, because this is whack. This is not something that we've experienced before. So, Beller, something you'd like to add? No? Anybody else? Any other chatter over there on the YouTubes?
I just want to talk about some resources, and I know that students have gotten a lot of emails about resources available on campus, but know that our student health services are still visiting with students. Counseling services on campus are still meeting with students. And if you, Bill has sent out a couple links about the Student Emergency Assistance Fund. So if you are looking for people who can help you get to the good place where you need to go, know that there are resources on campus, and we love you and we want to make sure that you're safe.
For sure. For sure. Great. Yeah, that's a...
I want to thank you for joining us. I'm not trying to get rid of you here, but this was very cool and a great way to engage our people, with information and messages about ways to deal with these things in this time for all of us. The breathing thing is great. I play a string instrument, so I don't worry about that. Breathing is, but it's still vital. It's still vital. You got to breathe when you play.
You need your brain sometimes to play a bass, Bill.
Not very often.
Sometimes. Well, it's my pleasure to be here, and I think that there's lots of folks there. If you don't have my email or my cell phone number, that I'm happy for all the students to have this at this moment and to sort of be a part of the team. So if you need anything, those of you that can hear me, make sure you reach out and find Bill Law or Amanda or Connor, and they'll hook you up with my email or my cell phone number. And I'm happy to be a part of the emotional triage team here. So happy to be here. Thanks for the shirt. Go Bison. Woo!
Thanks, Pat. As always, it's great to hear you talk and inspire everybody, students, faculty, staff, everybody. So we'll do this again. If you're willing to put yourself on display again?
Happy to do it. I'll wash the shirt.
Why?
That's it. I can only last an hour in a shirt. That's it.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, there really is no incentive to washing clothes right now.
I'm actually, I have a brass band that I've been conducting for a long time, and we do a different T-shirt for every concert. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna wear every single one of my Salt River Brass T-shirts before I wash the entire pile of those T-shirts. So it's that moment to go through like old clothing inventory and check it out.
Absolutely.
You're welcome, guys. My pleasure. Love you guys. Miss you, all of you. Stay
Thanks,
safe.
Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
You're welcome.
So everybody, how are we doing?
We're good. We're good. Amanda's good.
Anybody want to check in and unmute themselves and comment or ask questions or
I think a
talk
bunch
about
left.
anything?
I think a bunch left. There's only 8 or 9 of us left here.
It's only 19 on the video on the live stream. We were up to about 30, over 30 at one point. So I think that was useful. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think including Pat and sharing information, if nothing else, we're gonna learn a little bit, and it gets us together, and it gives us a reason to communicate and keep the team together. While we were doing that, Maggie sent me a cartoon, and there's a pig asking an alligator what time it is, and he says 7. And then he says, no, wait, that's the number of steps I've had today.
Wow.
It's Liz Climo. John, don't you like her as a cartoonist? Because that's the one with the cat and the dog. Do you know that cats were worshipped in ancient Egypt? And the dog says, do you know that I'm a good boy?
Right?
Yeah.
That's the best one ever. That's on my door. If maybe I'll find that online and post it. Okay, well, so we're here in this. I'm seeing some traffic on the live stream feed. Josh Biles weighed in. Mark did. Elise Ware did. The dogs are going crazy downstairs on something. I'm not sure. Maybe they're communists outside or something like that. So who knows? But oh my gosh.
They're delivering groceries.
Yeah, it must be something like that. I'm going to mute my microphone because this is ridiculous. Somebody take over and ask for questions if there are any.
So Amanda, we'll let you've been sort of the monitor here. If you want to run this shindig.
So are we looking to stick on for another little bit of time to communicate?
Only if there are questions.
Okay. I just closed my YouTube, so let me go back to it. And then somebody has it up if there's any questions that we're missing.
I got questions. I got it pulled up. So it looks like Kai Blazer was wondering which drum corps the son was going to march in. Connor Lane would like us to remember that percussionists still need to breathe. Elise Ware says, don't wash it. Mark Preston says, this really helped. And Josh said, it's always great to hear from Pat and learn about how the brain works. Those are the only questions we got on there, or comments.
That's excellent. Those are all great observations.
I'm concerned about Sandy Law if Bill isn't doing any laundry in isolation. Poor Sandy.
Well, to be truthful, I do my usual 2 or 3 loads, and I do the bedding.
Oh,
So,
thank goodness. Whew.
yeah, laundry is a grounding sort of activity.
It is.
I will remind everybody that we're having some voice candidates in the beginning of next week, and we'll have candidates, when I say in, obviously interviewing electronically, one person is coming in for Tuesday, Wednesday, another person for Thursday, Friday, and then the following week, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so we should be in a position to find out whether or not, on the basis of virtual interviews, that we will want to offer the position to one of the three, or whether or not we want to wait indefinitely until we can bring somebody in. But that's all moving along. And let me just invite questions or concerns or issues or happy places that people are, and then we'll wrap this up.
I'm all good with everything.
Yeah.
Agreed. Things are good.
Okay, well, we keep having a good time. We had a virtual little cocktail party with Bob and Sheila Challey last night, and if technology hadn't gotten in the way, it would have been a lot of fun. But it was good to see them. They're doing okay out there, and it seems like all over the country, people are dealing with some of the same things in different ways. But we're all going to get through this, obviously. Anything else, anybody? Well, thanks again to Amanda and Kyle Vanderberg for being the technological geniuses who have done all this stuff. So, way to go, everybody. You should do it with Bison symbols as well, too. Okay. So have a good one. We'll plan on doing another one next Friday. And if anybody needs anything, you know where to call, right?
Great.
Ghostbusters.
Kyle Vanderberg, I sent you an email this morning, I think. Hopefully we can touch base soon. Get back to me if you would, and let's do that. Aside from that, everybody stay safe, stay well, stay healthy, okay?
All right.
Thank you.
Later.
Have a good day.
Bye.